All right, so get this right.
Okay.
We got this message from someone, and they are absolutely baffled.
Really?
Yeah, they got blocked by discussing film on Twitter.
Huh.
And they are just, like, completely convinced they didn't do anything wrong.
Oh,
They
yeah.
sent us, some of their thoughts, their side of the story. And honestly,
Yeah.
they sound genuinely confused,
Wow. It's really interesting, how something like this, like, it's more than just a minor annoyance.
Yeah.
This feeling of, wait, what? Like being bewildered.
Right.
It really kind of shows how much we crave understanding and validation, especially online.
It's like you're at a party and someone just kicks you out, no explanation.
Exactly.
And you're left there, like, standing on the sidewalk wondering, what did I do?
Right.
Did I say something because of my outfit?
And in this case, our listener is adamant that they were totally normal.
Yeah.
They weren't harassing or trolling or stalking or anything like that.
Right, just regular interaction and then bam, blocked.
Oof.
And this is where it gets interesting because then we have to think about blocking etiquette.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole thing.
It is.
Yeah.
Like, when is it justified? When is it maybe a little over the top? It's a gray area, right?
Oh, huge gray area, yeah.
Well, because our listener brought up an interesting point. They said, discussing film is a public-facing account.
Sure.
Shouldn't they be ready for different opinions? Not everyone's going to agree with them.
Absolutely, and that's a really valid point. Public figures, anyone who puts themselves out there, they're going to get more scrutiny, more feedback, good and bad.
Right.
But at the same time, they do still have the right to manage their own space online.
Right.
So it's tricky. It's a balance. Have you heard of shadow blocking?
Shadow blocking. No. What's that?
So shadow blocking is when someone blocks you without you even knowing it.
What?
Yeah, they can still see your stuff, but you can't see theirs. They basically silenced you, but without actually confronting you about it.
Yeah, that's sneaky.
It is, right. And it stops any chance of having an actual conversation or clearing the air. But going back to our listener, it seems like what's really getting to them is the lack of explanation from discussing film.
It really does. They keep saying, what did I do? I have no idea.
Right, and that can really mess with your head. You start doubting yourself.
Yeah, you start overthinking every interaction.
It's like if you get a bad grade on a test, but the teacher doesn't tell you why, how do you learn?
Exactly. You need that feedback to grow.
Okay.
Okay, so maybe discussing film could have handled this a bit differently.
Maybe so.
What are some things they could have done instead of blocking?
Well, they could have actually tried engaging with the listener,
Really?
Yeah, even if they just acknowledged their viewpoint.
Okay.
They don't have to agree with them, but just say, hey, we hear you.
Right, just acknowledge their existence.
Exactly. Or, if they really felt it was going nowhere, they could have just muted the listener.
Muted, yeah.
Yeah, that way they wouldn't see their posts, but the listener wouldn't be totally shut out.
Huh. This reminds me of, like, community management.
Oh, totally.
It's kind of like diplomacy, How do you keep things healthy without resorting to, like, nuclear options?
It's about finding that balance.
Right.
Welcoming different opinions, but also protecting the space from, genuinely harmful behavior.
And there are actually ways to handle conflicts online, right? Like techniques?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Things like using neutral language,
Okay.
focusing on common goals, these can work really well online, too.
So just imagine if discussing film had said something like, hey, we see your comment, but it goes against our guidelines.
Right.
Would that have been better?
So much better.
Really?
It might seem small, but just giving a little explanation, it shows respect. It helps people understand, transparency and good communication. That's what makes a good online experience.
Totally. Now back to our listener. Do you think this whole blocking thing, will it make them less likely to, speak up online in the future?
It could, yeah.
Really?
It might make them hesitant, like they might think, oh, if I say something, I'll just get rejected again.
That's sad. Especially if they were, like, a really active part of that community.
Right. And it makes you wonder about the bigger picture,
Yeah.
What does blocking do to online conversations in general?
On one hand, blocking is important.
Oh, absolutely.
For safety, for curating your own experience.
Right.
But then there's the other side, censorship, echo chambers, all that.
Exactly.
It's complicated.
It is.
So I guess what we're saying is we need to think more carefully about how we use that block button.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be our first reaction, but a response to something truly harmful.
I think that's a great takeaway. We need to be more mindful.
So for everyone listening, what should they remember from all this?
Well, first, communication is key, both for individuals and for people running online spaces.
No.
And before you block, maybe think, are there other options?
Right.
And finally, remember that online, like in real life, we gotta have empathy,
Yeah.
try to understand other people's points of view.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
And to leave you all with something to think about, how do you use the block button? Is it a last resort or just a quick way to avoid something uncomfortable, something to ponder?
Yeah, definitely food for thought.
Until next time.
See you then.